Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. So, for most of us entrepreneurs, accessing capital is one of the biggest challenges that can potentially stand in the way of where we are and where we want to go. But as most of us who are business owners eventually learn, building wealth and building a successful life are not always the same thing. So today's guest, Alec Delpuech, has spent years helping entrepreneurs access funding and build business credit. But through his own journey of building businesses, failing, rebuilding, and scaling again, he's developed a very unique perspective, not on just financial success, but on what it actually means to build something that lasts. He's the founder and CEO of Credit Coach Academy and Legacy Strong, and he's helping entrepreneurs build business credit and access the funding that most banks don't want them to know about. He's got a no-fluff, results-first approach, and he's helped clients go from zero to securing real capital using the step-by-step systems he's built through years in the funding space. And his mission is simple: give everyday entrepreneurs access to the tools and knowledge that have always been reserved for the well-connected few. Alec, welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Krista. Happy to be here.
So you've had a pretty incredible journey. Could you just take us through that and tell us, because you came over to the US from France. So talk us through that, because that's pretty big, picking up and moving from another country over here to the US.
Yeah. So I'm definitely Americanized now, but I actually spent the first 15 years of my life in the south of France called Saint-Saturnin-les-Avignon, really small town. And growing up over there, I had experience with all kinds of cultures, but a big thing that ended up shaping the rest of my life was the fact that my dad was a business owner himself. So we had a big team and employees and a lot of clients and responsibilities. And so growing up in France was a very different culture, but I had that direct exposure through my father. And then thankfully, when we were around 15, my mom is American herself, so she wanted to be closer to family. And so we relocated over to the US, and I was really excited about it. I grew up watching all the American movies. And so thankfully, I got a chance to play football and go to college and all that. And so tying it in with the whole entrepreneurial side of things in high school, I was already very entrepreneurial focused. So I tried a couple of things in college. I launched a couple of businesses, and some of them actually did pick up really well. And we were growing. One of them was with a moving business, and we were getting some contracting job over in Panama City, and it was actually going great. I was hiring some buddies. We weren't getting rich per se, but we were making enough to kind of get by. But yeah, through that, I was able to gain some skills. Then I had an opportunity to move down to South Florida to work with a fitness company who was themselves expanding from France over to the US and needed someone kind of boots on the ground. And so then I was able to work directly with the CEO. So all that, I was kind of going into somewhat corporate America, but it was a small team. So I was able to basically learn a lot just by working directly with the leadership. But I still had that entrepreneurial itch. And so on the side, I was trying to learn different kinds of hustles, and I was trying to expose myself to different opportunities. I was very interested in the whole social media space because it was kind of blowing up at the time. And so I saved up a little bit of money. My first ever course was actually about 0% funding because myself, I was a young guy, 22, 23, and I didn't have access to that much capital. I realized that having access to money would allow me to just move faster and potentially hire other coaches and just do more things. So that to me was the first bottleneck that I realized. So I bought my first funding course. I was able to get a little bit of money, and then I started different things itself, and I realized I probably needed some more. And so then I basically bought my next funding course to like really put it all together. And at 23 years old, I was able to qualify for $250,000 of funding, which allowed me to do a lot. But what I think a lot of people kind of run into with the mistake of funding sometimes is I didn't really have a plan for it per se. And so I had access to all this capital, and I was trying to turn it into something. And so then I made all kinds of mistakes. And so I ended up actually losing most of that. So then going into the entrepreneurial space, I was actually starting in the negative net worth wise, unfortunately. And so that was something that, kind of exposed me and had me somewhat nervous, and I wasn't too happy about. But I knew that I was kind of going in the right direction. And so at least now I was taking some steps. I was networking, I was meeting some people. And so although I've just through trying to chase some rabbits and trying to force opportunities, I was although losing money, but I realized that I was able to qualify for $250,000 of funding. And so that's what allowed me to understand that every step of the journey, I was kind of developing these skills. And so I realized that this is probably something that could also help others as well. And so I wanted to find a way to help business owners that were not necessarily exposed to or aware about the whole 0% game. And so then I launched my business. Through some of the capital, I hired someone else to help me with the whole social media thing. And then I launched my funding business and just started running Instagram ads. And we kind of took it from there. And then I just started running my funding business for a long time at that point. And I'm very process oriented. Thankfully, I tried building some systems and hiring and delegating team members. It was not a straight arrow. However, a lot of ups and downs. I made a lot of mistakes. I tried every kind of model possible with the offer itself and the advertising and team members. I made a lot of mistakes with hiring and all that as well. But thankfully, it kind of came together. Then at one point, I got the business into a good spot in which I was able to have kind of that financial freedom I was hoping for. I wasn't maybe getting rich per se, but I was able to travel. I had no financial worries per se. But then once I had a little bit of money, I started to get into to trading again, trying to force more money in. And I basically made myself broke again, just because I basically tried to trade all my savings away. And so I basically have gone broke really twice throughout my career, like bad. But then thankfully, through the mindsets and just being confident in myself and as long as I stick in the game, I knew I was destined hopefully for success. And so I just kept pushing through and thankfully I got back in the funding game, refocused on that, rebuilt the business really fast because I already had all the skill sets that I knew about before. And then once I had it in a really good position, I realized that I've been able to travel. I'm in a good position now. I have team members that are doing most of the client work for me. I have a good confidence in the advertising strategies now. And so at that point, I realized that similar to how I was trying to help people with funding, do something that I had myself done before, right? Maybe I didn't qualify for $1 million of funding. I qualified for quite a bit, more than most. And for the funding business now, I realized that I had a lot of the systems and the strategies and kind of those gaps that a lot of people run into. And so then we launched the Credit Coach Academy program just to help funders that are in the earlier stages and even some that are more established that might be missing certain elements to help them now grow their own credit repair or funding business, and then with the right systems and team and support to be able to now grow. So that's where we're at right now. We grew Credit Coach Academy, and within about I think we're about a year and a half in, we're over $3 million revenue in this particular offer right now, annual revenue. So yeah, pretty happy about it.
Wow, that is an incredible journey. So building up multiple times,
Mhm.
failing, rebuilding, and now scaling really, really fast. So I imagine you've got some great lessons in there from some of the setbacks that you faced. Tell us a little bit about what you think those early setbacks taught you that success never could.
Yeah, I think the big ones are mindset. So a big one for me, I told my little brother this recently at his birthday because I was trying to instill some wisdom on him. And I told him that one of the greatest superpowers in life is belief in self. I really believe in that a lot. And so I knew that although I was setting back, maybe I was net worth negative and I was not in the best position possible, I knew that and what I kind of pieced together just by watching other people succeed is everyone kind of has that hero journey of ups and downs, sometimes getting all the way back down to zero or even the negative as well. But they always believed in that process. And so as long as you can kind of stick it out, sometimes I do think that entrepreneurship is almost like an endurance game. It's kind of like that hockey stick moment in which you're kind of treading by for a lot of time. But then eventually the bricks kind of finally start to piece together, and then you have that blow off moment. Because I know that for me, it was kind of step by step, but the second it all clicked, we really went really, really fast. So for me, the first one is having that belief in self. I think that's really, really important. Although I might have some setbacks, and even today, it's not necessarily easy, right? We're always having to reprove ourselves that we deserve this, that we have to earn it. That was a very important first one. And then the second one that I realized was the fact that I'm developing skill sets every way through. Every time that I have some kind of a fire in the business or some kind of roadblock, or we start to hit some kind of ceiling, I realize that I might have like some kind of gap in skill set per se. And that's why I'm always hiring and working with mentors. But even with I'm making mistakes, maybe myself sometimes, I realize that looking back, what's a really cool experience is maybe thinking back to maybe if you were to speak back to yourself from 2, 3 years ago, I'm sure you have so much wisdom you can impart on that person. And that's the whole experience of entrepreneurship. We're choosing the hard journey of life, really, in most cases. We could just be doing 9 to 5 and just taking it easy, right? But we're choosing this self-development path of self-growth. And so we have to also understand that although maybe it's not showing just yet in the bank account, I am developing the skills that will eventually allow me to hopefully click it together to have that hockey stick moment. So those are the two big ones for me: belief in self and the fact that you're developing skills the entire way, even though the bank account might not be reflecting it just yet.
I
So.
think those are two of the most important things. You touched on so much in there, so many different directions we could go with that. So I love that you mentioned that you always hire coaches and mentors. I think that's so important that people speak into our life. They also help us
Mhm.
identify blind spots, which is now what you're doing for other people. And I loved the analogy of the hockey stick. I think people think
Mhm.
success is like that 45-degree angle ride, and it's really not. It's like up, down, forwards, backwards. It kind of feels crazy and all over the place, which it sounds like it did for you too. I think that's going to be really comforting for anybody listening because they're on that same ride and that same journey, and you're still on it in your business, even though you are successful and you're driving a lot of revenue. So I think that that's fantastic. So in your experience, um, why do so many business owners, finally get access to capital, but still fail to build a successful business afterward? What do you think is contributing to that?
Yeah, I guess I think the most biggest mistake that people make, just because I work with a lot of coaching clients and all that as well. So I think in a lot of ways, it's just knowing where to put your time and attention, I think, is understanding like the biggest fires in your business. I know that even myself sometimes, in a lot of ways, I sometimes default to the work that I like to do, which tends to be systems and automations. I'm just a big kind of systems nerd in a lot of ways. But although I should be focusing my attention probably sometimes more on the content and the marketing and all that. So I think a big mistake is that now you have the resources through capital, but are you deploying it in a way that allows you to ideally create leverage? That's one of the things that I think I'm relatively good at with my business is if we're having to change processes or implement something new, I always try to streamline it right off the bat. So can I maybe hire someone and then through an SOP or an operating procedure, I can allow them and empower them to do it for me, or can I do it with automations or AI. So I think a lot of owners, they just don't understand what should I be focusing on, and then just getting distracted with things that don't matter as much. So then basically have someone that has problems right now, but then 6 months later is dealing with the same problems, which is unfortunate because ideally over that time, you've been able to find a way that not only solves a problem, but does it that's again automated or delegated so you don't have to worry about it anymore. Then if you have access to capital, that allows you to get the best systems possible, allows you to hire the best team members as well. And even right now we're constantly hiring too, and we're hiring a new systems person. Again, I love systems, but then I realize that the amount of time I'm putting towards that, I could hire someone, buy my time back to then redeploy somewhere else. So I think that's important, is understanding the bottleneck analysis. Although you might have 1,000 fires right now, which are the ones that might impact the most if you were to solve for them, and then moving forward that way, just always thinking about the priorities per se. So
I
yeah.
think what you're describing, I like to call the founder's trap. So
Mm,
it's effectively where you are at some point when you start a business, the one man band. And then as you get going, you realize you can't be the center of all things because then you are creating such a large bottleneck. So if anybody's in that situation right now, what would be the first thing that you would tell them that they need to do? Like, what's one practical thing they could do right now today to help bring
mhm.
clarity to what you talked about, which is where should I focus in my business?
Yeah, so where to focus on the business? I like to think about getting as close to the money as possible, ideally. So, for example, I'm coaching credit repair and funders myself. So, let's say you could be focusing on marketing, or you could be focusing on getting client results. Well, right now, if you have clients that are waiting to get funding, let's focus on them because if you do get them funding, you make commissions and back-end success fees. So that's the closest to the money, right? So that would be something. And then on the marketing side of things, the lower you go on the funnel, right? If you're talking about conversion, people actually showing up to calls and closing the deal, that's the closest to money right there, I would say. So those are like obvious ones. So bottom of funnel is usually cheaper, but like more impactful. And then for clients, ideally, it's just people that are close to paying you. So focus on them. But otherwise, I like to do what I call like a time audit as well. So again, if you're doing a lot of things that are keeping you in the weeds, if I ever feel like I'm starting to get really heavy in my business, I'm just working nonstop and I just can't get my head above water necessarily, I'll try to start to audit my time. So I'll literally start to throughout the day, I'll just take my Apple Notes and just write down what am I doing right now? And I'll try to do that as much as possible as I think about it. And then after a week or two, I'll just feed that to AI and I'll just ask it, hey, could you just let me know what are some elements that I can maybe automate or delegate or even through AI, just step out of myself. Then ideally, again, through leverage, I try to no longer have to worry about it. But I think a lot of reasons why people think that they can't necessarily automate or delegate or any of those is because they think that they have certain expertise that they cannot maybe hand off necessarily. But Alex Mosey talks about this too. The only reason that you're able to do something special per se is because you're really good at pattern recognition, basically. And so, like, for example, if you're building out a funding plan for a client, you know that you're going to look at where they located, what banks have they worked with in the past, have they burnt any bridges, what's currently working right now. And so you can hopefully turn that into something that you can teach someone else because everything you weren't born knowing these skills that you have today anyways. So it's just pattern recognition. So anything that you're doing yourself probably is something that you can just try to instill and dumb down almost, then you can hand it off to someone else. But then creating SOPs and everything, you just have to make it almost dummy proof. You just have to go through the entire process yourself, literally recording a video, screen share, and then I like to transcribe it and turn it into text format as well. So if someone learns better by reading or listening or watching, you have it in every format possible. So that's it.
Wow. So I love how you talked about recording your time and then giving it to AI.
Mhm.
What was the biggest, or I would say most surprising insight that you got from doing that about where your time was going?
Where my time was going, I would say, yeah, it's hard to say. I guess it's kind of week to week, but yeah, probably some of the busy admin tasks. I like to think that I do delegate and automate relatively simple, but I just find myself falling into the tasks that I like to do. I know that the important work that I'm supposed to do, the same thing I was just talking about as well. Sometimes I fall into that myself. And so I just try to reframe it a little bit to how can I make this maybe more fun or enjoyable? But I do find myself sometimes falling into the busy work itself. And so then by using AI, I can kind of pinpoint that and hold myself accountable a little bit. It's almost like having like a personal coach. And so now I can kind of remind myself, hey, you're doing this, you shouldn't be doing this. The reason that you're doing this right now, although it's the task that your executive assistant should be doing, is probably because you're not basically allowing her to do it. Maybe you're stepping in too early, or maybe you haven't made the training good enough. And so now that's why she's not necessarily taking it off your plate entirely. So sometimes I find myself maybe not empowering my team enough because I need to, again, just improve the process. Or sometimes I kind of hold on to it maybe for too long, but that's probably what I noticed. So again, I feel like I'm pretty good at it, but I'm always getting better and having to learn. Again, as we kind of grow in business, you always kind of notice these things. So 100%.
That sounds like the good, better, best philosophy. I think it's good, better, best, never let it rest. So it sounds like you are focused on being efficient, but making sure that within your efficiency, you're also effective. So tasks
Hmm.
are at the right level. You're focused on the things that are your high cards. And then you said, I like the word empower. You're empowering your team to pick up and do the rest. So let's talk about your clients for a minute. So with the clients that you're helping, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that you found that they have about business credit and funding? Are you seeing cases of where they're coming in and they're frustrated, they think they're fundable, but lenders are seeing them differently?
Yeah, so we work with funding clients all the time, and obviously a lot of funders as well. So through our whole community of funders and working with funders, we see probably over 1,000 funding clients every single month. So every profile imaginable. So the main things that I see people miss on, I like to think about it with the who, the how, and the what. That's kind of how we think about funding overall. So the who, this is the individual applying and the entity they're using. The how, this is how are they approaching the bank? Are they doing it online, in person, over the phone, or through a banker contacts? And the what, this is what we say on the application. So I think a lot of people, they tend to, like, if we're talking about funders, they tend to only optimize for data points. I think that only having the data points and what to say on the applications, that's enough. And so maybe I can skip some steps with the optimization of the profile. The biggest thing I see people that are looking to qualify for funding, the mistakes that they make is that they tend to use somewhat higher risk category entities. So a lot of people, they apply with real estate investment LLCs or trucking and things like that. So the banks have guardrails as to what companies they consider lower or higher risk. So that's the most common one. And then just not understanding the full personal profile. So I'll just try to run through it super quick. But basically for personal credit, we have what we call the Cinderella profile. So the perfect princess, but in this case, the perfect borrower. So with that, you want to have certain elements, like you want to have low utilization, below 30% on all cards. You want to have clean personal information, so no duplicate names, not tons of addresses, clean employers. You want to have at least four personal primary accounts, so three credit cards, one credit mix. You want to have at most two inquiries per bureau. You want to have over 2 years average credit age and a comparable credit card of 10K plus limit. So that's a personal profile. The detail is that you have to have every single one checked off. If you miss just one element, that's enough to scare the bank and get you shut down. Then for the LLC, I keep it pretty simple, just no red flags. So because in a lot of ways, if you're qualifying for business credit, you're qualifying most likely through no doc funding. So you can apply just based on the trustworthiness of the credit profile, basically. So as long as a personal profile is good, the same way that you would apply for a personal card, you can just get approved. You can do that on the business as well. Thankfully for businesses, the purpose of credit is to most likely grow the business and make more money. So that's why they're willing to give you even more credit than you would on the personal side of things as well. So as long as you optimize the personal credit with the Cinderella profile, the LLC, the only thing you want to think about is just no red flags. So you don't want to be in a high risk industry category, kind of the ones that I talked about. So just legality concerns, like maybe like cannabis, for example, or like investment related or capital intensive, even like restaurants. To keep it super simple, the main industries that they like to see are consulting, marketing, online based, high margins. So low risk name as well. You don't want to mention investments or any of those in the name. That's really it. Just no bad history on the business. And so that's the who. The how. This is going to be how do we apply. So every bank is going to have different risk parameters and what they're kind of looking for, and this changes every single month, really, because we're dealing with businesses, right? And so they have certain factors that are going to be macro conditions. So like right now we're going through a recession. There's a war happening somewhere, so they're trying to go risk off. Or there might be certain internal metrics that they're shooting for, like, hey, we didn't lend enough this month, so let's open up and ease up and get more higher approvals. Or in the opposite sense, hey, we have a higher fraud rate right now or a higher default rate, so let's tighten up our process, basically. And so depending on where they're at, if they're trying to open up, they might go from, hey, we need clients to apply in person to being okay with applying online. In the opposite direction, if they're seeing a lot of fraud, they might go from getting people approved online to now asking them to go in person. So that's kind of what we see on that side as well. So it's going to determine. So your client could have the perfect profile, the Cinderella, no red flag LLCs, but you're using the data points online. But this bank actually prefers if you go in person because they see too much fraud risk right now. So that's the how, which also involves like having sometimes a relationship. Like Amex likes to have a relationship before giving you 0% funding. Chase likes to have a checking account with deposits before applying. And then finally the what. So we got all that, and then we have the what. So what do we say on the application? So some banks, again, we can do no doc funding. You can get approved without showing tax returns and bank statements, but ideally, you want to get as much as possible without having to trigger those documents. So basically, you can kind of somewhat optimize what are the projected numbers that our business is hoping to make if we qualify for the funding. We're allowed to give them projected numbers to the businesses for the banks, and so that's what we optimize there. So what are we projecting to make in the business? What's our projected personal income? And so that's also going to change month to month as well. So that's the full breakdown.
I love that. That is so comprehensive. What you're really talking about is packaging and there's so many different factors that the banks are looking at. So you mentioned high risk twice when you talked about the entity. And what I think you're referring to is the NIAX code. So whenever we set up a business, we have to select a NIAX code. And so for everybody who's listening, that's NAICS. And that really says a lot about the business that we're in. And so everybody needs to be looking at that and thinking about that. So if somebody's listening and they're like, oh my goodness, I want to go make sure I didn't select, like I've been denied recently, and I want to make sure that the NIAX is not an issue, how would you advise them to do that?
Yes, so there's two different kind of situations basically. So if your business is established and it's at least 2 years old, you can qualify for business lines of credit. So basically, this is an additional financial product that you could qualify that's not available for brand new businesses. So in that case, I might go through the process of updating the name, updating the NAICS code, and making sure that we're in that low risk category. So maybe involved, it's going to be somewhat involved though. You're going to have to contact the different business bureaus. You have to contact every single bank that you've worked with and make sure everything is matching, because that could be a red flag to the banks as well. If you have everything matching, Experian business, Equifax business, but Duns and Bradstreet is showing the old name. that's a red flag. They're going to shut you down. So, but if your LLC is over 2 years old, it could be worth it to go through that process. But if your business is not over 2 years old and you want to play it a little bit safe, maybe you don't need business lines of credit. You can get up to 150K with business credit cards. If you don't need more than that, I would honestly just start a brand new business, a brand new LLC, start it from scratch, do it properly, and then you can basically get the funding you need and then lend to yourself if you want to from one business to the next. I'm not an accountant, I don't advise on that, but how would you basically make it sense? You can lend to yourself and then charge yourself interest basically. Businesses do it all the time, but I would do it that way. If it makes sense, if it's old enough, you want to qualify for BLOCs because you want even more funding or you just want different types of funding, or if it's a little bit newer, might as well just get a new one anyways. So
So that's also super comprehensive. So
mhm.
if there is there any way if they have their NIX code that they can get out and check to see if that is something that a lender or bank would consider to be more high risk, like one code over another? How do you know where that code is falling in terms of risk? If you've just gone out and you're selecting from a list,
Mhm.
how do you determine that if you're not working with someone such as yourself?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, in most cases, you can be somewhat transparent with the bankers as well and ask them a lot of questions. They want your business, so you can always just ask around. But in most cases, if you do want to optimize and get the best results possible, we just focus on what we are confident being the lowest risk categories, which are going to be either consulting, marketing, or sometimes e-commerce. So for clients looking to start a brand new business, like we talked about, we'll just either categorize it consulting or marketing, which are somewhat broad categories as well. There's probably a way to, categorize ourselves within that to still make sense for our business. But yeah, I just want to make sure we're doing that properly. And obviously, even though your client also is running a marketing business, it's great to also tell the banker what our category is because we've seen it before where maybe your client's running a real estate marketing business, but you tell the banker I'm running real estate marketing, they catch the real estate part and they categorize you as real estate. So also, yeah, understanding what low risk categories are and to be very specific and educated and providing that context for the banker is important. But yeah, if you're not sure, I would just try to maybe join communities or yeah, just be transparent with your banker and see, what do you, I'm sure they'll know about the NAICS code and then you can ask them questions as well. Yeah.
So, do you have a team of people? You mentioned that all of these things, all these factors are changing on an ongoing basis. Do you have a team
Mhm.
of people that's working alongside of you to keep track of that? Because you had a lot of information about what
Mhm.
particular banks, and we'll just go back, we'll touch on Chase because you mentioned that
Mhm.
they want to see deposits before you come in and start asking for a loan. So, how are you keeping up to date on everything that's changing in the background?
Yeah, so that's one of the most important parts. If you are running a funding business, I consider it almost our cost of goods sold is how do we deliver on the product itself. And so the data points is going to be something that you're having to subscribe to and then find a way to stay on top of. Because again, you might have bought a funding course in the past, but if it's over 6 months old or even sometimes weeks or months old, it's already probably out of date because they, again, change so much. There's macro conditions, their KPIs and all that. So yeah, we spend a lot of time doing and following and tracking data points because again it's very important for us, it's very important for my credit coach academy community, so we make that as easy as possible for them. And so uh, the way that we do that is we have tons of exposure. So I've been in the funding industry for a while now. I'm connected to all the top funders, so I connect with them pretty often and ask them questions. We also support over 80 active funders at this moment with all of their clients, and we're also actively funding myself. So in my community with my people, we see over 1,000 funding clients every month, which is already a lot. And then I've already also built multiple different AI scraping agents as well. So we have access to a lot of different school groups, and so we have agents that are scraping those groups to see what are people posting about, what are they seeing. We have it transcribe the group calls as well to see what are they talking about, and then we organize all that into notes. We have it scanning forums. We have it. I have my team members joining different group calls. So I sometimes buy data points as well. I join masterminds. I connect with funders. So we do it all. We try our very best to have that. And then once we have all the data points, basically we feed that into what I call the vault. We have our inner circle vault. And so that's basically a database that we have for our clients. And basically you just click on the bank you want to apply for, and we'll give you full context going back 3 or 4 years. In some cases to the banks, you'll see all the updates that have happened over the past 3, 4 years. And you'll just scroll down below and you'll see the page of telling you exactly what to do. Okay, in this bank, we need to open up a checking account. This one, we don't need it. And then once you do apply, it's best to go in person or over the phone? And what do we say once we apply as well? So we have all the comments and contacts. We have the AI kind of scraping those and organizing it, try to make it as simple as possible. So that's all the hard work that we do for the funders inside of Credit Coach Academy. But yeah, if you weren't part of something like this, you definitely need to find a way to have access to data points either through your network or through communities because again, you're selling a service, you want to give good product and good outcome for your clients as well. And although you might really master the what's of the individual applying, the how and the what, those two very important pillars, that's going to be changing every month with the data points. So you have to be on top of that somehow. And I'd consider that cost of goods sold. Like I said, sometimes you have to pay to run your business. It's like almost like a newsletter. How can I maybe have access to different groups to have that? But yeah, we do a lot of work for data points.
So, as a business owner who's potentially thinking about growing and scaling, then your team
Mhm.
is really that additional support to help them get connected with understanding if they're fundable, if not, why not, and the steps that they can take to move in the direction of becoming fundable.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why like the whole business funding coaching industry really exists is because we have the full context after working with a lot of clients. Hey, here is what the Cinderella profile looks like because we're just reverse engineering. What are the profiles that tend to get the best results? Let's turn you into that. And then with the data points, we're doing all this hard work to see exactly what's working with the banks every single day. And so that's why we're able to charge a fee and deliver a service is because people don't have that context. And so now we have AI. People can ask questions to it as well, but in a lot of ways, AI is just going to respond back with the information that's publicly available. And it's also trying to give you answers as fast and as cheap as well. So as soon as you ask it a question, it's going to try to find the first form it can and just give you that answer. So that's again, AI is getting close. It's getting smarter every single day. And I use it a lot, but for data points, it's not just quite there yet. So that's again why we're still in business and why business owners still really need us. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot. We talked a lot about systems and processes and, information, but you're also very passionate about mindset because you touched on that a couple of times very early into our conversation today. So you've talked a lot about building a life that you call legacy strong. So
Mhm.
tell us about legacy strong. And was there a moment in your journey where you realized that success on the financial side maybe just wasn't enough?
Mhm. Yeah, so I like to subscribe. This is an interesting one to like him or hate him. I think Ty Lopez, he's got a really great framework towards the four pillars of the good life with health, wealth, love, happiness. And so I try to focus on having that somewhat of a balance. So health is just being good physically fit, mindset, wealth with the money and the business feeling good. Health, well, love is going to be relationships, and then happiness, just what you do in life in general. So that was what I was kind of optimizing for in my life. I think when I started to get into business, I was trying to understand, which I think I'm kind of good at, is understanding what do I kind of want, what's my next goal, what I trying to optimize for, and a big one for me is just nowadays we have the ability to make money remotely online. So that's why immediately I resonated with the social media space because I can sell to people from a distance, multiply effect as well. If I record one video, I can sell that to hundreds or thousands. So I really resonated with that. But then obviously, when you run a business, in a lot of ways, you're basically self-employed for a lot of the time in your earlier stages, kind of what you hinted at too. So I realized that a real business that's going to take systems, it's going to take process, it's going to take team. I'm going to have to make enough money to afford all that as well. So I kind of understood what that was supposed to kind of look like, and then I just built towards that immediately. So thankfully, I kind of understood what I was trying to build towards. And so the whole reason for Credit Coach Academy is that I built these systems that allowed me to stay organized, that allowed me to run good marketing with retargeting, with content, with all the different touch points. And so that allows me to get leads in and monetize more. With the back end, the entire system that we install is meant to keep you more organized, more on top of things, make sure clients don't fall through the cracks. In a lot of ways, people in our industry, you sign up funding clients and sometimes they go, sometimes they get distracted, sometimes they get, they just fall off. And so having a more professional experience, this allows you to keep them engaged, keep them more confident in you and your process. And so not only that, now that you have an organization behind it, you can also hire a team as well. I've actually worked with a lot of people that are operating out of paper notebooks and just, off of their head. And so that's great. But unless your team starts to move in and becomes your roommate, you can't necessarily share the notebooks with them. So that's when we have to have like SOPs in place and to-do boards and all that. So I basically created this program because I realized I was trying to optimize for not only money, because having the systems allows you to stay organized and do that, but also allowing me to finally also have a business that empowers my life as well. So, because I'm not trying to build my life for my business, I want my business to be built around my life as well, and allow me to. Thankfully, now I travel relatively often, and I have a team now, so I'm allowing them to share this journey with me and make money together and build together. So that's what we kind of tried to optimize for necessarily. So.
Well, Alec, thanks for joining us today. It was so great to have you on the show. Tell everybody listening how they can follow you, get connected to you, even better yet, work with you.
Yeah, so you can find me on all social media channels, my first and last name, so Alec Delpuech. And so we have a lot of videos on YouTube talking about some of the concepts we spoke about today. I post on Instagram all the time as well. So if you want to work with us, you can just send me a message through Instagram and we'd be happy to connect and show you exactly what we're doing on the inside, show you some client wins, show you exactly our entire process. We do done for you systems install. We have a dedicated one-on-one account manager that you'd be working with, someone that you can work directly alongside, that's worked with a lot of funders in the past. So he'd be able to coach you on your marketing, your client results. We can look over profiles together. We have a big community now of a lot of funders that are positive, that are excited, that are getting big wins. So you have a collaborative environment as well. But yeah, please check out my channels. We give out tons of information for free. We have free mini courses as well. So just ask about those.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Alec. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Until next time.